This is the Creating and Managing Invoices training course. Welcome to the Creating and Managing Invoices training course. Here is a list of topics that will be covered in this course. Lesson 1, Creating Invoices. Lesson 2, Managing Invoices. And Course Summary. Course Introduction. During this course, we will walk through the invoice creation process in Ohio Buys and recognize the key changes associated with this process. Create invoices from a purchase order. And manage invoices, invoice statuses, and payments. The following key terms and changes will be useful to help you understand today's course on creating and managing invoices in Ohio Buys. Suppliers can flip purchase orders created in Ohio Buys directly into invoices. The state and their suppliers can track the progress of purchase orders, receipts, and invoices all in one place. Users will be notified via email and system notifications to validate specific fields and provide missing information for invoices. And alerts guide suppliers to submit complete and accurate invoices to help streamline invoice processing. Note that suppliers who currently submit their invoices via electronic data interchange or e-settlements will continue to do so rather than using Ohio Buys. Lesson 1. Creating Invoices. As a supplier, you have the ability to create an invoice from a purchase order from the Acknowledge Orders page. You can select the purchase order and flip it into an invoice. Doing this will automatically pre-populate header and line item details from the purchase order. You can edit fields as needed, and submit the completed invoice to the state for processing. You can include all of the line items in a purchase order on the same invoice, or split line items up into multiple invoices. When viewing a purchase order, you will be able to see all of its associated invoices. We will now demonstrate how to create an invoice from a purchase order. Purchase orders that you can act on will appear on your homepage in Ohio Buys under My Purchase Orders. Click the pencil icon next to a purchase order to begin creating an invoice. Click Create an Invoice to flip the purchase order into an invoice. Note that certain fields such as the order number and line items automatically populate from the purchase order. Enter a supplier invoice number and invoice date. The supplier invoice number will serve as an internal identifier for this invoice with the supplier. Select a supplier location from the drop-down menu. This determines how payment will be sent by the state. Select the line items for which you want to create the invoice. Note that you can update the quantity of each line item that you are adding to the invoice by typing in the quantity field. To select all line items, click the checkbox in the top row. Review that the rest of the invoice information is accurate. Click Submit to create the invoice and send it to the state for approval. Or, if you are not ready to send the invoice yet, you can click Save to create a draft of the invoice to be submitted at a later date. This concludes our demonstration of how to create an invoice from a purchase order. Knowledge check 1. True or false? You can choose to include some, or all line items from a purchase order on an invoice. This statement is true. You have the option to select some line items or all of the line items in a purchase order when flipping it into an invoice. Lesson 2. Managing Invoices. You can track all invoices, invoice statuses, and payments related to orders submitted in Ohio Buys from the Manage Invoices page, which can be accessed by clicking Invoicing in the navigation bar, and selecting Manage Invoices from the drop-down menu. Please note that you cannot track the statuses of invoices created outside of Ohio Buys. From the Manage Invoices page, you are able to search for a particular invoice using keyword search. You can also filter by search criteria such as order, minimum total invoice amount, max total invoice amount, and status by clicking the More Filters icon. When viewing an invoice on the Manage Invoices page, You can see information such as the invoiced amount, the invoice date, and the payment date once payment is sent by the state. To view more detail on a specific invoice, you can open it by clicking the pencil icon. You can also track the status of your invoices from the Manage Invoices page. The 4 different invoice statuses are listed in the table below. Draft. Invoice has been created, but has not been submitted for review. Approval in progress. Invoice is waiting for the associated goods to be received. Approved. Invoice has been processed and sent for payment. And canceled. Invoice has been canceled. When the state determines that an invoice requires additional information, or is not accurate, they may reject it. This will change the invoice's status from approval in progress back to draft. The state will provide specific details on what needs to be revised in the comments section on the invoice, and an email notification will be sent to the user that created the invoice. The invoice will appear on the supplier's homepage under My Pending Validations until the necessary revisions are complete and the invoice is resubmitted. A supplier can only cancel an invoice when it is still in draft status. Once the invoice has been submitted for approval, it cannot be canceled by the supplier. Suppliers can view the status of a payment or payments on an invoice by navigating to the Payment tab of the invoice in Ohio Buys. Please note that this does not apply to invoices created outside of Ohio Buys. Knowledge Check 2. Multiple choice. Which of the following options best describe possible statuses for an invoice within Ohio Buys? Option A. Draft. Option B. Approval in progress. Option C. Both A and B are correct. Or Option D. None of the above. The correct answer is C. Both draft and approval in progress are possible statuses for an invoice in Ohio Buys. Course Summary. Now that you are familiar with creating and managing invoices in Ohio Buys, take a moment to note the following key takeaways. Suppliers can create invoices directly from purchase orders created in Ohio Buys. Relevant information from the purchase order will automatically populate to make it easier to create an invoice. Alerts will assist suppliers throughout the invoice creation process to ensure accurate and complete invoices are submitted. And suppliers can track and manage invoices created in Ohio Buys through a specific purchase order using the Manage Invoices page. When viewing an invoice, suppliers can view the status of payment or payments associated with that invoice. You should now be able to walk through the invoice creation process in Ohio Buys and recognize the key changes associated with this process. Create invoices from a purchase order. And manage invoices, invoice statuses, and payments. Thank you for taking this course. If you have any questions, please email Ohio Shared Services at ohio.gov or call 1-877-644-6771.